This is the Seahawkers Podcast, episode 461. I'm Brandon Schultz, and I am joined by my good buddy, Mr. Adam Emmert.
Yep. Finally got here to do this with you. And our first post-Super Bowl pod, first post-Klint Kubiak press conference pod. There's some other stuff that's been in the news as well. So actually a few things to talk about here. And
first post me having the flu pod.
Oh, yeah, man. You were sick as a dog, buddy.
It was brutal. I'm still not over it, but I'm like okay enough to finally record now. And maybe by the end of the show, I'll be wiped out, but we're going to get through it.
You look good. So I wouldn't be able to tell at all that you're sick. It must be the touch up your appearance button.
It could be the filter that I'm now using because it does. Mm-hmm. It helps the color. Like my hat is much more blue and vibrant. If I'm going to record a show, I'm going to take all the help I can get. I got this microphone that makes me sound awesome. I got a filter on the video that makes me look good. And, I don't know what else, but I'll figure it out.
Before I know it, your AI generated avatar is going to be what appears on screen here and talks at.
Hey, when that happens, when that's available, I'm going to use it. Like, we're going to be like two of the handsomest Seahawkers podcasters out there.
Oh, 100%. Much like the Seattle Seahawks coaching staff now. Mike McDonald, handsome man. Maybe not the handsomest, handsome man. And then he brings in the cubes, Klint Kubiak.
Sure.
And not a bad looking dude. And I also like a little bit of what he had to say throughout the presser. That was fun.
We're going to get to him. We're going to get to our interview with Cam Miller. Speaking of handsome young men. Quarterback of the national champion North Dakota State Bison. We're going to be kicking off our interview series from the Shrine Bowl. We're going to be doing it big, and we're going to have Cam Miller on the show here later. So yeah, it's a show full of handsomeness, Adam.
It is. I'm sorry to drag it down, but I'm here nonetheless.
Well, one guy, before we get into the Klint Kubiak press conference, there was a little bit of Seahawks news here this past week. We found out that the Seahawks are restructuring defensive tackle Leonard Williams and going to give him a base salary of $1.2 million, a restructure bonus of 18.7. And they're doing the void year thing, Adam. So they're adding 2 void years to his contract. What does this tell you about our Seahawks and what they have planned here for this offseason?
Team double down, baby. That's what that tells me. When you start adding void years on the back of stuff and things like that for a team that's over the cap, one of the handful of teams that are, and they have to make some moves to try to get back under the cap, get themselves to a point to where they can participate in free agency, sign their rookies, and all of that. This restructuring is going to go a long ways toward that. And who knows? I mean, maybe it's a precursor to a big move. I don't know if it rhymes with Schmeika Schmartians or Myles Garrett, something like that. That might be cool.
Myles Garrett out there reportedly interested in being traded for. You can understand why you'd want to be out of Cleveland. That makes a ton of sense for him. That would be one move. Well, either one of those guys would be incredible for the Seahawks to have Micah Parsons or Myles Garrett. If you had to pick and cost wasn't an option, you just wanted to go with who do you want between the two?
Myles Garrett.
Yeah, not even accounting for a little bit of age difference with Micah Parsons, a little younger.
I think Myles Garrett is a more complete football player in the run game, whereas I think Micah Parsons is a superior pass rusher as a whole. I mean, I know this year that he was injured a lot, and so Garrett had the bigger numbers and all that stuff, but I like the more well-rounded profile of Myles Garrett. And not that that's any knock on Micah Parsons. They bring in Micah Parsons, I'll be over the moon too. Not that they have to do either, but it'd be kind of cool.
I'd be curious to know if it's even possible. One, Myles Garrett. I mean, anywhere is going to be an improvement over where he's at. After watching what the Eagles did, and knowing that their free agent situation, if they could not bring back Josh Sweat because he's a free agent and upgrade to Myles Garrett, that makes a ton of sense for the Eagles and just seems like something they would do.
or they won't. And look, there's a lot of other teams out there that Myles Garrett could go to. And one of the things you hear about some of the stuff that people have talking about, potential destinations and all that for Garrett, and the Seahawks are never on that list. And, when I think about the Seahawks needs this offseason, I think of offensive line first, as we all do, no doubt about it. But I think their second biggest priority needs to be another dominant edge rusher, another guy to pair up with Mafe and Hall. And you can get yourself to that elite level. Maybe you're not exactly where the Eagles are, but you'd be pretty damn close. And a move for Myles Garrett, I think, makes a lot of sense for everybody involved. I mean, there's a world where you end up trading DK in a pick, maybe, or you maybe mortgage the future a little bit more with some future draft picks. But Myles Garrett has seen Mike McDonald operate in Baltimore 2 times a year. He knows what he would be getting into. A great defensive head coach who's going to feature him and get the best out of him and build on this, defensive player of the year season that he just had. And at the end of the day, I would be excited if I was somebody like Myles Garrett to get to somewhere like Seattle, that they're the only double-digit win team to not get into the playoffs. So it's not like not like he'd be traded to the Raiders or something where there's no chance of getting to the playoffs and being better than he has been with team-wise with the Browns. The Seahawks are a landing spot that makes some sense. They're not that far away from being a legit contender.
Why do we have to trade DK? Like, why? What are you doing?
That's just an option. I don't know. It's some of the trade capital. Maybe you trade Tyler and a first and a second, or who knows? Like,
you want DK a lot of ways to go to Cleveland?
Well, I'm not. Look, I'll tell you this: if it came down to choosing between keeping DK or basically trading him in a decent pick for Myles Garrett, I'd take Myles Garrett every time.
I would want Myles Garrett for sure, but I also don't like this idea. Like, I felt like the conversation was going in this direction. We're gonna if we're gonna trade DK, it's going to be to reinforce the offensive line. Like, what's more important, having a number one receiver or being able to protect your quarterback? And so it's been kind of the DK as a trade chip to help the offensive line. And now we're saying F the wide receiver spot, F the offensive line. We're going Myles Garrett. We're going all in on the defensive line, baby.
Number one, not F the wide receivers. And we can get into why I think the wide receiver position is not going to be quite as important with new offensive coordinator K squared. But with that said, F the offensive line? Absolutely not. Here's the thing. It's hard to go out and get top tier pass rushers. You have to have one of those top picks in the draft to go get that guy usually. And this is a proven commodity of Myles Garrett. That's somebody that you can go out and get. Where the Seahawks draft, they're not going to be able to get that sort of pass rusher in this draft, or hopefully not in the next 2 or 3 drafts, because they're going to be picking so low because they're so successful that it doesn't really matter. What you can do is you can find offensive linemen, specifically interior offensive linemen, some of the best at their position later on in the draft. I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah on the Brock and Salk show today, and I don't know if he was on today, but in the last couple of days, and talking about the best center position or center prospect in the entire draft. And, some dude out of North Dakota State, 6'5", 500 pounds, bench presses a building in a single bound or whatever. And he's like, yeah, he'll probably go in the 20s. So he's right there to be had around 18. So you can still go out and solidify that offensive line and trade possibly for somebody like Myles Garrett. And if they don't, I'm not going to be mad about it. Like, I don't have huge feelings about it, but I do think that would be one of those moves where you're like, okay, we're truly doubling down and going all in.
I don't know why you can't just say Gray Zabel's name, Adam, because he was a guy that Cam Miller brought up in our interview of one of his teammates that he expects to be making it to the NFL level. And he's a guy who's, been talked about as one of the top offensive linemen and maybe a candidate for the Seahawks. So kind of cool that we got to hear that straight from Cam. And I don't understand why John Schneider's allergic to drafting centers like early.
I don't know.
Because that's one of those positions I feel like in the 20s, in the second round, even you can go out and usually get one of the best guys. And why isn't that one of the positions where you recycle regularly, similar to a running back, right? Because an offensive line, especially a center, like, yeah, you got to pay that guy when he comes up due for his contract. I mean, you don't have to, but what I'm saying is, like, those guys are always available toward the end of the first round, middle of the second round as the top guys. Why isn't that one of the ones that's like a cyclical pick?
It's a good question, because that's one of the things that we've seen with the Eagles winning the championship this year is the way that they invest in both sides of the ball on the trenches and on the line. And that's something that you kind of see the Seahawks doing a little bit more when you think about, Derek Hall being drafted in the second round, Byron Murphy being drafted in the first round, and, Charles Cross being drafted in the first round. So I'd like to see them kind of continue that trend and really spend draft capital on both lines. With that said, as far as the center thing, I think this all roots back to Creed Humphrey and D. Eskridge. I think that's what this is really about. Still not over it. And I don't think you ever should be.
I'm still not over it, but it's to the point now where they could have drafted Creed Humphrey and then allowed him to go to free agency and then gotten a comp pick, essentially, from him being a high draft pick, taking a high salary, and then gone out and then drafted another dude last year who was probably one of the top centers now.
It's totally doable. We'll see if he starts to change his ways here. I think that it's interesting. I was hearing Salk talk about the idea of how it's always obvious in these Super Bowls when you get down to it that they're won and lost in the trenches for the most part. And it absolutely was this last weekend with the Eagles.
Yeah.
And him just kind of being like, yeah, until draft time comes around. And then that, first 4-3 sexy receiver comes up and, well, yeah, we need to help the trenches, but this guy runs like a gazelle and oh my God, the hands, and that was basically where he was getting at with that. And it happens every year. We'll see if John can not fall for that trap again. And there are going to be players that are best available at their position, available for where they pick in the draft if they don't trade those draft choices away. And hopefully those are positions, or not hopefully, but also we know that those are positions that we need. And hopefully John says, look, I'm not so interested in the BPA crap, and I'm going to take the best player available at that position that we desperately need to contend now.
And part of it depends on what they end up doing in free agency coming up too. So between free agency, between who ends up being available, where they end up selecting, if we trade away our first round pick just so we can get Myles Garrett, then, the little bit of that strategy might change.
It might. You never know. After watching the Super Bowl, Brandon, Trey Smith, are you down on him now? Are you less likely to want to bring him in as a potential guard replacement there on the offensive line?
Well, I thought that he was one of those pieces that they ended up having to move around because of other injuries on that Chiefs offensive line. So put me down for offensive line in free agency, in the draft. I don't care.
Yeah. Just get it done, right?
Yeah.
Let's get those guys there because we're going to need it to play the style of ball that Klint Kubiak wants to play.
And one of the things that he kicked things off with is, well, the answer I thought that was one of the more interesting ones is that he was talking about how this team needs to have more than one way to win.
The number one thing is that, you better have more than one way to win. We're going to have an identity. We want to be smart. We want to be tough. We want to be physical. Those are three critical attributes, but it's important that we can run the football, that we're successful throwing team. We got to have all of our guys contribute on special teams, and we have to communicate that to the offense how important it is to win as a team. And there's not one way to do it. So here, going from April to June, we better get rocking on the fundamentals so that we can win multiple ways come the fall.
The number one thing having more than one way to win.
The number one thing is practicing the fundamentals, and that's what he got after there. And he'd even mentioned at some point during the presser about how they really needed to start there, and like all the other stuff will come later, and that's fine. But we're going to be really good at what we do, right? Not try to be great at a bunch of different things or mediocre at a bunch of different things so you can win a bunch of different ways. I think that was one of those answers that's like, yeah, I do like to run the football, okay? But we should also be able to pass too. Like we're going to be able to do a little bit of it all. And you do need to be able to win in multiple ways to a degree. I mean, again, going back to the Super Bowl, they really did contain Saquon Barkley throughout that game. The Chiefs did. And
the Chiefs made it obvious, right? That they were not going to get beat by Saquon Barkley.
That's right.
Well, we'll get beat by other ways, and they sure did.
Yeah. And look, Jalen Hurts made the throws when he needed to make the throws. And another thing that proves that you don't have to have one of those top 5 quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts is not a top 5 quarterback.
No.
To win the Super Bowl. Like we've seen it again. Like right there, he beat the great Patrick Mahomes. And that gives me a little more hope going forward with Geno here for the next year, maybe 2.
You might not have to have a top 5 quarterback, but you need to have a guy who you can do some voodoo cap magic with, because that's one of the things that I was amazed by when I went and looked at, because I was thinking, oh, well, Jalen Hurts got paid, so they've got to be paying him top tier quarterback money, because what was it? It was like a $250 million contract, and they had him down and that was, I think, the previous offseason, and he's still only at like a $14 million cap hit this year. Next year, it's like a $25 million cap hit. They found a way to structure his contract in a way that makes it super team friendly for the next few years.
Right. And I think his contract was 2 off seasons ago.
Yeah.
I think is when he redid his deal. It was right before they had the Struggle Fest season the year before, where the wheels all came off. So I don't know that that's voodoo cap magic either, because I think what we've seen with NFL contracts,
they have 4 void years on his contract. That's voodoo cap magic.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But all the contracts that you see when they put out however many years and this, that, the other thing, the cap, it's all about the first 2 years of the deal. And then the rest of it is usually pretty team friendly. And that's when guys usually start holding out and wanting to renegotiate their deal. Much like Geno wanted to renegotiate his deal last offseason with 2 years left and haven't gotten the bulk of the guaranteed money already. So, yeah, I mean, it does go to show that even if the number feels really high for that player in the moment, in 2 years, you're going to be looking at that deal and thinking, wow, what a bargain. And I feel like that was exactly how it went with Geno's last contract to a degree, too. There's a lot of people that thought, his $25 million-ish a year situation was outrageous.
Yeah.
And you're not going to win with the guy. Now that's bottom tier starter money, basically.
Well, he's gotten back into the area, too, where I think they could structure a contract similar to Baker's deal and backload a lot of it and have him under a cap friendly amount for the next 2 years, and to where, it makes him whole with the money that he earned based on his contract the last time. I feel like that's probably the way things end up going, because I just, there's not a whole lot of options for Seattle. There's not a ton of options for Geno. This is probably going to be the way it works. And you hear from Klint Kubiak, he had 2 different answers focused on Geno Smith. And it sounds like the organization, whether it's Mike McDonald, whether it's Klint Kubiak, very high on Geno.
I think Geno is his own man in a great way. Like, Geno is a very aggressive player, have a lot of production. Obviously, he's been doing it for a long time. He's overcome a lot in his career. I have a lot of respect for Geno. Was a huge draw to come here and be able to get to coach him, alongside Andrew Janocko. So we have high expectations for him. We're going to push Geno and get the best out of him, and we'll do that by pushing his teammates as well. It's not just his show; it's a team thing, and he's got to be the head of that. I think Geno's tough as nails. I think you look at the guy in the fourth quarter and he goes and wins football games. So that excites me. That fires me up. I've watched his career, studying him more now than I ever have before. But you just you think about a guy that's been through a lot of adversity, the guy that's been knocked off the high horse and had to claw his way back into the starter's role, and then he comes back the last 2 years and wins more games in the fourth quarter than anybody in the NFL. That's a guy that I want to coach.
Geno Smith, a huge draw, come to Seattle.
Yeah, that might have been surprising to a lot of folks when he said that. But I think this offseason, for whatever reason, not just the NFL insiders like Kubiak, right, who's been a lifer in that sort of thing. But even the media and guys that had been a part of the NFL before their media career have all started to come around on Geno. I've heard many different people talk about Geno, and we're finally getting to the point to where people are putting him in his proper slot, whereas he's a very good quarterback in the Jalen Hurts kind of range in terms of what type of QB he is, but not one of the elite guys. And that should be a huge draw to a lot of the OCs that were looking at this position. Obviously, it was to Clint. And I like the fact that he focused on, I think, probably the most important part about what Geno has done since he's been here. And it's that he showed the clutch gene. A lot of people want to say that he's not clutch. He's always throwing away the game. And I know he had some bad interceptions in the red zone last year and all that. But the numbers don't lie in the fact that he's the guy with the most stats, the stat being fourth quarter, come from behind or from tying to win the game.
Right.
And there's a ton to be said about that. Why wouldn't you want to coach that guy?
Yeah, that's been there. I know we're still waiting for the playoff side of it, which, some guys
Does
are
he
clutch.
play defense?
No, but
or offensive line?
He just hasn't had the opportunity. That's still the wait and see part of this.
He played the Niners tough for the first half in the year they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. But
that was with the defense crap in the bed all day.
But Baker has been relatively clutch in the regular season, and then we saw him in the playoffs, and he turned unclutch in a critical moment. So yeah. I still have that question.
I'm a bigger Geno believer than I am a Baker believer. And that shouldn't surprise anybody.
Yeah, I feel like they're very similar, but
you can, as I've said before, him, Darnold, like all these guys, they can play at a upper tier regular season level for sure. Baker's even looked pretty decent in the playoffs for the most part. And it's just a matter of the team that you have around him. And that's exactly what happened with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. They had the team around that sort of quarterback.
Switching over from Kubiak to Mike Macdonald, one of the interesting things he said in the introductory press conference for Kubiak was that every candidate had a vision for DK Metcalf.
Every candidate had, how we were going to use DK definitely at the top of their mind. It's great to hear different visions, throughout the league of how guys saw him. I think Clint has probably the best vision out of all those guys. But we have to go through the process of how you do it. It's how you can move them around, how you can take care of matchups, the route tree that's available on how we want to build it. So the track record's there. I mean, just like what they did in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson as a rookie, Chris Olave last year. I mean, all these premier wideouts in this system, especially under Clint, has really come to life.
So if the headline is that Coach Mike Macdonald picked the guy who had the best vision for DK Metcalf among the candidates, probably not a guy who's going to get traded this offseason.
That's a great little breadcrumb there. I think you're right on that. Only because not so much what they said about DK and the vision and all that. What I found interesting is every time Kubiak was talking about the weapons and the receivers and all that, there was one name decidedly off that list every time, and that was Tyler Lockett.
Oh, yeah.
So that would make me think that they're probably not looking to restructure. They're probably looking to move on because Tyler stated at the end of the year that he wasn't done playing. So I found that interesting. If they are going to move on from Tyler Lockett, then it does make it more difficult to move on from DK at that point, I would think.
Especially based on his cap number. It makes no sense. If he were to structure in a way that works for the team and works for him, I could see them making it happen, but that ends up being money I think that I'd rather see used in free agency on the offensive line, on the defensive line, which is tough, but especially being a big Tyler Lockett fan, but it's one of those areas where if you're going to start using tight ends more, if you're going to start using receivers out of the backfield, then what production do you need out of wide receiver 3?
There you go. Because I think we're going to see a lot less of 11 personnel, and bye-bye. That doesn't hurt my feelings at all. We're going to see some other personnel packages that has a lot of 2s in it, Brandon, and I'm fired up about it.
Like, I don't know, maybe playing with a fullback even?
Certainly loved playing with a fullback, like being in 21-12 personnel. Again, that's going to come down to, the strength of our players, who we have on our roster, and let's use the best 11 out there. Let's get the 5 best eligibles deployed out into the route scheme. So those are things we're working on right now, who that's going to be. But we got to adapt as coaches to our best players on the roster.
Yeah. Fullback time, baby. Give me some more Max Strong, some more Mike Robinson, some more John L. Williams. Like, yes, let's go. I know that most people aren't fired up by fullbacks. They're more fired up about, receivers drafted in the top 10 to be your third receiver that doesn't make sense for basically 3 years like JSN. But I'm excited about the idea of going out and getting a fullback, getting that extra receiver off the field and playing some smash mouth frickin' football. I can't wait. This makes me so happy.
How about Zach Charbonnet, Seahawks fullback?
No.
You can find a dude on the team that could play the role. Shoot, I've even heard Byron Murphy's name thrown around there as a potential fullback candidate.
Yeah. Mike McDonald said no, basically about that in the press conference.
He said he's not going to be our starting fullback. He didn't poo-poo the idea completely, and doesn't mean that there isn't a role for him there.
Yeah, no, I think that was a very diplomatic way of him being like, no, like that one's mine. You can't have
my defensive player is not playing fullback. I would be really surprised if they're able to find, I don't know, a Kyle Juszczyk type dude, or it just seems like the way that the fullbacks just they're not out there anymore. Like, you have to find a guy who can convert from tight end or can convert from some other position to kind of play the role. We'll see.
So Ricard for the Ravens, he's a former D lineman, right? And he's a hell of a fullback. Juszczyk was a tight end, I want to say, when he was coming out of college. So you're looking for like the undersized D linemen that are just super tough and athletic, or offensive linemen, or the shorter tight ends, right? That's kind of where you're looking there. And you would like to think that those guys are everywhere. So just go find yourself, a guy that catches the ball well, blocks well, but he's just undersized to be a tight end. And like, nobody wants to play him there. Well, heck, we got a spot for you. It's called fullback. It's one of the best positions in all of football. I can't wait for it.
Here's the thing that I'm having trouble squaring with the fullback conversation and another answer that Kubiak gave, because he said that we're primarily going to be an outside zone run team.
It's important to, establish a way of doing business here. We're going to start with that being an outside zone. But obviously, we're going to incorporate gap schemes, inside zones, pen and pulls. We got to do what our players do best. So, we have a philosophy that we believe in, a style that we believe in. But you got to be able to win more than one way, like we said. So we'll start with the fundamentals, running off the ball, and then we'll get to know our guys, and we better do what they do best, or else we're not going to like the results.
If you're fundamentally an outside zone run team, doesn't a fullback just kind of get in the way?
Kyle Shanahan just called and said no.
I don't feel like they use him a ton.
They've used him less in the last couple of years. I mean, they use him as, a fullback, kind of a wild card player, a lot like the Saints used Taysom Hill. Kubiak brought up Taysom Hill.
Sure.
And there's no reason why you can't play a fullback in outside zone. Kyle Shanahan has shown that you can absolutely do it. They've done it in San Francisco for years.
I'm trying to picture them using Juszczyk in those outside zone run plays where I feel like they're using him in the passing game. They're using him in other ways. I mean, it's fine. He can be on the team. But, you can have a fullback on the team. It just, I'm having trouble envisioning it in my brain is all. Maybe because I haven't seen Mike Robb in so long.
Yeah, man, you've been deprived of good fullback play for way too long in your fandom. You've forgotten how amazing it is to watch some dude get out there and run through the hole and lead the way for your star running back, Ken Walker, and just mush people, making stacks of pancakes. Not just a pancake. He's making stacks. He's making IHOP jealous.
Yeah. And make no mistake, it is Ken Walker who is the guy for Klint Kubiak.
Ken can fit in just about in any style. He's a talented player. So I'm really excited about him in this zone scheme. Okay. But I've seen Ken in all schemes play really good football. I've seen the guy catch the ball well out of the backfield, which I think is really important for our backs that we utilize him. Obviously, whatever we can do to get him touches, throwing them routes out of the backfield, throwing them screens, get the ball in their hands, getting the ball to our best runners, and that's what he is. So, and I think he's got a really good group of teammates that complement him as well, and especially with Charbonnet. So, looking forward to him in this scheme, and we're going to ask a lot out of him.
I'm looking forward to him in this scheme too, Adam.
Oh, God, yes. Now, the only thing that gives me pause is the first thing that he brings up, same thing that Mike has brought up many times, smart, tough, dependable. It's a football catchphrase. It's been around forever. The problem with Ken Walker is he's very smart. He's super tough. Not all that dependable. Because health is a part of talent, and that's the one part that gives me pause. But it is music to my ears to hear the offensive coordinator properly rank the talent at the running back position when you're looking to run the football more. Because that was one thing that was frustrating with Grubb is it felt like when he did run the football, whenever he finally committed to doing it, like now and then, the couple times that he did, it was always with Sharps. And it's like, well, where was that when Ken was in the lineup? Or why is Sharps in there for 2 series? Like, Ken's been running great. Like, just frustrating.
It's frustrating to me to put him in the non-dependable category because I feel like people have been categorizing Ken Walker, not saying you're doing this, but that they're categorizing him in the same way as Rashad Penny, essentially. And
right.
It's not the Rashad Penny through 3 seasons. He had 0 starts. Okay. Ken Walker through 3 seasons, 37 starts. So let's not put him in the category of Rashad Penny, who is non-dependable. He missed the first part of 2022 because he had a sports hernia. He was out with 1 game with an ankle sprain a little bit later. In 23, Ken Walker missed 2 games because of an oblique. And then last year he missed 2 games because of an oblique and then missed the final 4 or 5 games because an offensive lineman landed on his ankle. Yeah,
which is totally out of his control. Obviously, there's not a lot he can do about that. No, he does not have he does not have a case of the processes, right? Like he's not infected with that, just being constantly injured like Procise or Penny or that sort of thing. For sure. Just maybe not. He is not Josh Jacobs. He is not Aaron Jones. He's not. Who can you think of? I mean, even like James Conner. James Conner's there week in, week out. Like even King Henry. Like he doesn't miss many games. So, I mean, there's levels to it, but he's certainly not down there. You're right.
37 starts, I said, through 3 seasons. Alvin Kamara, James Conner. That's pretty close to where they're at a few more games. James Conner had 44 games, so it's
not massive.
So, not Josh Jacobs, not James Cook, not Derrick Henry, not Najee Harris.
I saw one article that was talking about the Seahawks trading for Najee Harris, and it was like, what? Why? He's not even the best running back on his team.
He's a free agent. Why would you trade for him?
Maybe I read the article wrong. I don't know. I thought they were talking about trade. Oh, maybe the sense that I got was they were like, well, you'd have to get rid of Ken Walker. I think maybe that's where I was thinking the trade part of it. But no,
Najee Harris is not an upgrade.
Not at all. Why am I paying a guy? Wouldn't this be his 3rd contract?
No, Najee was 2021.
Okay. So this would be his 2nd deal. All right.
This would be his first big contract after his rookie deal, but
right.
2nd deal.
Yeah. You don't pay backs that 2nd big contract. You can pay him the first one, but you don't pay him the 2nd one.
It's interesting because he's played a ton of games, but in terms of the yardage that he's run for about as many yards as James Conner and played in 9 more games over that time span.
Right. And I would argue too that during that time frame, I know the Steelers' offensive line hasn't been perfect, but better than ours, better than the Cards. And the fact that he would need more games to do that with a better offensive line blocking for him, I think that speaks volumes.
Offensive line, definitely an issue for him because he does have the lowest yards per carry of every running back that's played more games than K9.
Najee Harris?
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me.
3.9 yards per carry.
Yeah, which is, it's not a terrible average, but yeah, I'm not super interested in Najee, even after he put the thump on us 2 years ago. That wasn't fun to watch, but.
So we've got Ken Walker, we've got Zach Charbonnet. You mentioned it too, what he's looking for in offensive linemen in terms of, well, not just offensive linemen, but he was asked about offensive line in particular, and that's where he talked about having guys who are smart, tough, and dependable.
It's all players, smart, tough, dependable. And with the offensive linemen, they got to be intelligent, and they got to be available. They have to be healthy enough to get better, practice every day, and contribute to the team. So those are really important things. The skill takes care of itself. That's things that we're evaluating right now. But having high intelligence between the ears and be able to react quickly to movement in front of you is very important.
It's interesting that it was not athleticism that was one of those things that gets brought up. And I feel like, especially with the zone blocking scheme, a lot of people think, okay, well, you got to have athletic offensive linemen because you're trying to get to a space on the field. You're trying to move laterally more so than, explode forward. And athleticism, you would think that would be a component of it, but intelligence, the number one thing.
Yes, definitely intelligent. I think that goes across the board for all NFL players because you get to this point in your football career.
Athletic enough.
You got to be athletic enough, right? But think of the Eagles offensive linemen, Brandon. Do you think of them? Let's take the smart component out. Let's just assume that they're all smart and can do the job. They just want a title. Okay. Do you think of them as being athletic or maulers and just huge?
I think of them being maulers.
Yeah, exactly. And they run a lot of outside zone. They run everything. So you can still do it.
Well, it's funny because I think it was one of those conversations I heard on the radio. Matt Hasselbeck, I think, was talking about it, about the idea of zone schemes being considered more soft than other running schemes where you're, dictating, especially where you're going to run the football. And yeah, I don't think that necessarily has to be the case.
No, he definitely wasn't a buyer on that theory that zone running is, softer than a gap scheme or pin pull, whatever, any of that other stuff. But look, man, I will settle for the soft running of zone if we're actually doing it. Yeah, and just do it as in comparison to last year. Like I would settle for that. Plus, look, the history of that sort of style of running the football. I mean, whether it's been, Daddy Shanahan, Little Shanahan, or McVay, like this zone scheme has been something that has worked for a very long time and will continue to work if you have the players to execute it.
And finally, I have another Mike McDonald clip because he was asked about the importance on converting on fourth down. And he had some interesting things to say.
It's like when you play Navy in college, it's just an absolute pain in the neck. But it also speaks to how effective you are in early downs, creating some of those third down situations in plus territory where more of your playbook is open. And then being able to convert in those high leverage situations are incredibly important. And we'll have a plan for that. But absolutely, we're looking at that, working on stuff as we speak.
And this was in response to a question from Hawk Blogger. And he posed the question as the final 4 teams that were in the championships, in the 2 championship games. They were 1, 2, 3, and 4 in terms of being the best at converting on fourth down. And so how that's an important part. And I wanted to get your take on what you thought about that.
Yeah, in terms of converting, Yeah, anytime you can keep the chains moving, whether that's on third or fourth down, if you're good on those two downs in that situation, that part of situational football, you're going to be a good offense because you're going to be on the field. That's one of the things that happened to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. They couldn't stay on the field. And their defense, tried like hell and actually did a decent job of like, hey, if the offense just does something here, we can be in this game, until they couldn't anymore. And at the end of the day, you got to be good on third down and or fourth down. If you're good enough to stay on schedule to be able to be in fourth and shorts in situations that make sense to go for them, then great. And then be good at it, right? And the Eagles push tush is a prime example of it. But what they didn't say is that you need to be one of the highest teams in terms of how many times you go for it on fourth to be in the championship game, because last time I checked, the Lions weren't in there.
And I don't know if this is the one problem I have with trying to just say, well, you want to go for it all the time on fourth down because you have to be good at it to be one of the best teams in the NFL. And I feel like it's more a byproduct of just having a good offense, that you can't just will your way to fourth down conversions, because even though with the Chiefs, they converted a lot of fourth downs in the regular season, but when it came to the Super Bowl, they weren't good enough on first and second down to even be close enough to where they were in fourth and manageable, because they were in third and long so much of the day. So you can be good at it all you want, but you kind of have to have a good offense to be able to get yourself into those positions of being. Even Washington, I feel like, who probably went for it on more fourth and threes than the Eagles, who were mainly going for it on fourth and 1 and 2. I feel like it was like they had the offense that was more built for it, I guess, because they had the running quarterback. They had the run game. They had multiple ways that they could convert those fourth downs. And I don't see our offense, unless you're getting into those fourth and short type situations, to where you're going to be able to convert a lot of those.
You're going to be in that situation more often, I think, with a Klint Kubiak offense than you are with a Ryan Grubb offense. And the reason being is that if you're running the football with consistency and some effectiveness, I mean, it doesn't have to be awesome every time.
Yeah.
You have a much higher percentage chance of being on schedule in terms of getting a couple of yards on first down, getting a few yards on second down, and then having a third and, manageable. Maybe you come up a yard short. Now that fourth and 1 is there at your own 43.
Yeah.
Like when you're dropping back and passing in the straight drop back game, all the time, you're going to end up taking sacks, especially with a bad offensive line. The pass rushers know what's coming, so they're just going to start teeing off. And now all of a sudden you're completely off schedule. You'll never even have a chance to go for it on a fourth and reasonable.
And that was the other thing about the Chiefs. When did they have an opportunity to actually get on schedule? I don't think they started running the ball until the fourth drive of the game.
Yeah. I don't even know if they had a run play before then.
I don't know if they did.
Yeah. Look, I am surprised as to how the level of domination on the defensive line to the Chiefs offensive line for the Eagles. Like I know they're damn good. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but Chiefs offensive line has been really good since the Tampa Super Bowl. And I know they had some injuries and they're shuffling some things around, but they have made it look good this entire season. And I thought that they would be at least adequate enough to give Pat a little bit of time to not be thrown all over them. And then Pat was just off all day. I mean, he was dirt and stuff. He couldn't find Kelsey early, missed on a bunch of throws, let alone the interceptions. And then it starts to pile up when the pressure is just breathing down your neck and it just goes downhill from there. It's almost like I've seen that movie for an entire freaking season last year.
Well, especially when you can't do anything. And they started off blocking with 5 dudes and, then they're blocking with 6 and the Eagles are still getting there with 4. And then, there's even times where they're blocking with 7 guys and the Eagles are still getting there with 4. It's like, if you can't stop the 4 dudes, like no matter how many other dudes you put out there to stop them, then
it's curtains.
It's over.
Yeah, it's over, man. And again,
and by the
just
time they
goes to
started
show.
running the football, they were already down 3 scores. So
Exactly. Yeah. It just once again shows the premium that is good trench play. And that is how football is won and lost.
how about that? It's weird how that works. It shows its head again in this game between the Eagles and the Chiefs.
Yeah, man. It's crazy, too, because just like the GMs that Salk was making fun of falling in love with receivers and perimeter players and all that, as fans, I feel like we watch these Super Bowls and are like, man, yeah, trenches, baby, all the way trenches. And then as we lead up to the draft, everybody's excited about some other skill position dude or perimeter player in some way. And I'll say something like, no, we don't need another freaking wide receiver. Get me somebody in the trenches, and I get killed for like 2 years in the comments.
It's fine. Just start priming people now. Remember what you watched in the Super Bowl, and remember what we've seen from our own Seahawks in the Super Bowl. I mean, when we had success, it was because of the guys up front on both the offense and on the defense, and that's how we won.
1,000%, man.
Let's get back there.
There's just no other way to slice it. It's the entire history of football.
And it can mitigate issues like if you're not excited about Klint Kubiak as your offensive coordinator, like just having dudes who are good, that helps. You don't need to be an amazingly great play caller if you have guys up front who can just move the football and you can just be good.
Not only that, is Andy Reid the best offensive mind in the last 10 years?
He's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Him or McVay.
Sure.
Or Shanahan. Probably one of those 3 guys would be who people would throw out there.
Yeah.
So with an offensive line that was banged up and couldn't do diddly poo, one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of football, stymied. So yeah, you could even be a great offensive coordinator and you don't have the dudes up front and you're screwed. Like, especially if you're not a great offensive coordinator, you really need those guys up front, like you were saying.
That was one of the other things that I was kind of laughing at a little bit about watching the press conference with Kubiak. And they're like, well, yeah, he's not the greatest personality, but maybe that means that he'll be sticking around longer because he's not super dynamic in terms of his personality. And I wanted to think, you don't need to have a dynamic personality to even be a head coach, for one. You just need to be really good at your job. And a lot of times it doesn't come even down to you just being good at your job. It's just you have a good team that ends up executing well, and you get a job just based on the look at Jim Caldwell. Not a dynamic personality. He ended up being a head coach.
You need to have some to be a head coach because you do have to be a leader of men. You have to build a culture. You got to do all that stuff. And I think that's one of the criticisms people have had about Coach Mike is just him being kind of a little bit of a lower key guy. Can he build culture? Can he do all that? We shall see. I do think he's on the right track with all that. But it reminded me so much when I got done with this press conference. Something my mom always tells me. She's like, boring is good. Boring is good. And I think Mike went out and found himself a coach that is actually more boring at the podium than he is.
Oh, yeah.
I think Mike McDonald is more entertaining at the podium, but I don't care. All I heard was fullback, baby, run the ball. We're going to do it a bunch of different ways. I'm all in on Gino. Like, that was all music to my ears. Look, he wasn't my favorite my style of coordinator was this style of coordinator. He wasn't my favorite of the potential options out there. He was more in the mid-tier for me. But I can promise you this. What we have with Klint Kubiak is better right now, day one, than we had at any point throughout the Ryan Grubb experiment. So right. I'm fired up for that.
That part is going to be obvious. And sure, I liked Ryan Grubb's personality better, but
I'd probably rather sit around a campfire and joke around and have beers with Ryan Grubb than Kubiak. Not that Kubiak's a Texas guy. I think, Montanans and Texans seem to have a kindred spirit, so we'd still have a good time. But I think Grubb's a little more entertaining. I liked listening to him more. Just hated everything that he did with offense. Like, I couldn't stand that part. So I'll take the reverse of that all day.
All right. Well, that was a fun introductory press conference, especially with the fullback conversation in there, Adam. We've got some more fun conversation coming up. We've got Cam Miller, who we interviewed at the Shrine Bowl. He's a national champion winning quarterback, North Dakota State, and looking forward to letting you guys hear that interview that we had with Cam coming up next. We are live at Shrine Bowl 2025, and we are joined by North Dakota State quarterback Cam Miller. Cam, you're coming off a national championship at the FCS division, and you beat the Montana State Bobcats. We got a Montana Grizzlies alumni right here.
Yeah,
so I know we probably should root for our state, but I guess I don't know. I didn't go to Montana, so I don't know the animosity between the two.
Just screw the Bobcats. I don't know that there's anything else to say. So yes, thank you so much, Cam. We appreciate it. Yeah.
What's it been like so far being here at the Shrine Bowl and being around? It is an all-star game. Have you had anything like this that you can look back to and kind of point to similarities?
I think for me, it's just being from a small school. I think this is a great opportunity for kids at, the FCS level, Division II level to have this kind of exposure. And I think, I always draw back on, even during practices, throughout the week, it's just, the big games that I've played in throughout my career and understanding how to manage pressure and those kind of situations, I think have really helped me.
Yeah, I can totally see that. So you're at North Dakota State now. Did you grow up in North Dakota?
Iowa.
Yeah. Okay. So what led you to North Dakota State? Because, it seems like a university that has had success pumping out NFL quarterbacks. Was that something that kind of led to that?
I think that was a big factor in my decision. I also think just the culture and the coaching staff. I didn't have a lot of big offers, when I was in high school, and I felt like I would fit in well to the system at North Dakota State.
How do you feel like you're matching up with some of the other guys who are here this week? Like, have you gone out there and felt like you're competitive? Have you felt like you need to do anything different? What's the experience been like for you?
I've tried to just be myself and not, compare myself to other quarterbacks. But I think for me, it's been a great experience to just take as much information from the coaches and the other players and see how the quarterbacks, do footwork and, how they throw the ball. I think all that has been great learning experiences for me throughout the week.
Has there been one big takeaway in terms of coaching points or learning even from other players that you've taken away from this week?
I think our position coach has really done a really good job for us. And I think having been pretty successful at the FCS level, and sometimes you get in your own head and you think that, you've arrived because you've been successful. And then to come here, it was, pretty humbling for me to see where I'm at and what I need to continue to work on. And there's a lot of areas of improvement for me.
Don't start going humble. Just start walking around. You say, I'm national champion Cam Miller. Like, what's the deal?
That's not my personality at all.
No, I don't get that sense at all. So some of the coaching points that they're working on with you for the NFL level, where is it stuff that kind of new kind of coming in, or is this different stuff than you're accustomed to? Is there anything that they're kind of pointing you towards because they're like, hey, NFL level's a little different? These are some things to look at.
I think coming in, I knew that it was going to be a slight adjustment, but coming from a pro style offense, it's very similar. It's just the route concepts are a little bit deeper in the NFL. So having to adjust my footwork off of that and taking deeper drops, it's just stuff that we didn't do at North Dakota State. It's not something that you do at the college level. So just adding a few more extra steps and cues to my game, I think has really helped.
Have you noticed it helping being in a more pro-style offense? Because, you look at a lot of college football and you're playing out of shotgun majority of time, and having that experience and being under center a little bit more. Have you found that helps in a situation like this, or do you just not find yourself going under center as much?
I think it's been great to go under center in college. I think just having that experience is really translated to this week. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't taken a snap from under center, because first off, it's different getting snaps from somebody you haven't worked with for 5 years. Right. So having just 3 or 4 days with these guys has been great, but it's definitely helped me having taken snaps from under center.
One of the things that I feel like we see throughout the week of practice too is that they're rotating guys who are just interior offensive linemen.
Right.
And so a lot of times they'll have guards that they want to see that what they can do at center. And we've seen some pretty wild snaps through the week. So obviously it takes some work to try and work through that new process too for those guys.
Absolutely. I think as an interior offensive lineman, I think it's always great to be versatile and, to be able to play left guard, center, right guard. So I think it's good to put that stuff on tape, and, it's been fun.
So the NFL draft process has to be a whirlwind. Just kind of seeing everything that's going on here. Almost feels like you guys are practicing in a fishbowl out there. I don't know if that feels weird at all, but of the NFL draft process to this point for you, is there anything that has popped up that surprised you that you didn't expect?
I knew it was going to be great competition here. And I think for me, it's understanding that there's great athletes at this game, but if you want to play at the next level, the athletes are going to be even better. And these guys at this bowl are going to continue to, develop into an NFL guy. But, first practice, you're out there with a 5-year vet or a 10-year vet. And I just think the game, it's so much different than the college level.
I'm kind of curious, though, to go back and find out how, what got you into playing football in the first place.
It really started with my dad. Growing up, my dad was my high school football coach. And when I was young, I would go to his practices and watch all the teams that he would coach. And that's really where the love of the game came from. And I always wanted to play for my dad. And that was a unique experience for me, just to be able to spend 3 or 4 hours a day with him on the field. And there were some highs and lows in that experience, but I think that's really where the love of the game came from.
So when it comes to playing quarterback, was that something that your dad kind of wanted you to play that position? Was there another position you were interested in where you just more naturally gifted at playing quarterback? What then got you into the quarterback
Or did
spot?
you want to be a kicker like Eli Manning?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. So my dad never really told me that I should play quarterback, but I always felt like that's something that he wanted me to do. And he had actually played quarterback in high school for the school that I played for, and they won the first state championship that my school had ever won. So for me, growing up, that was kind of what motivated me to play, to play quarterback. So I think that's the reason why I play it.
One thing that we've been asking all the guys that we've brought in for an interview here is, do you have any football pet peeves? What's your biggest football pet peeve? Like, is it,
It'd be a little thing.
Yeah, getting back to the huddle late, or, the water bottle gal just squirts you in the eye too often, or whatever it is, is there anything like that?
For me, it's getting stepped on by the offensive lineman. That is the worst. And then
it looks awful.
Coming from North Dakota, it's freezing, and, sometimes we'd practice outside and it would hurt even worse. So I would just say when the offensive lineman, steps on your feet, that's the worst.
Heck yeah.
How often does that happen?
Usually like once every 3 days. But
gross.
I know.
That's terrible.
And then you take your sock off, and sometimes it's bleeding, sometimes it's bruised, but, it's part of the game.
Part of the game, for sure.
What's been one of your favorite moments playing the game so far?
Here at the bowl, or just in general?
Just any time in general.
For me, it was winning the national championship this year, having my final game played in Frisco, and knowing that it was my last game. I think to go out on top like that was, the best feeling that I've ever had. And so,
not a lot of guys get to do that. That's pretty cool.
Right.
Not to mention scoring 4 touchdowns along the way, right?
That's right. That was pretty cool.
How about favorite moment here?
I think my favorite moment here has been the first practice, and just seeing all the guys come together from different schools, different universities, and compete together. And just like, for me, adjusting to the speed of the game has been a lot of fun for me. And then just trying to prove myself in front of scouts.
What game of yours should we go and watch? Throughout the national championship, what game would you point us to if you said...
Why would you throw that one out?
Because you would watch that one because it's awesome, and then I want the next awesome one.
I think you're a jerk. I think you should let him pick that whatever he wants.
He already picked it for his favorite moment.
Yeah. For me, I'd say the Colorado game. It was the first game of this season, and just to play against, Shador and Deion Sanders, it was just an awesome atmosphere, and I think that was one of the better games that I played in this year, and I think just to showcase my skills against great talent was awesome.
So which game of yours, if we wanted to go back and see where you needed the most improvement, do you have a game in mind there you're like, man, it just wasn't there for me that game?
For me, it was Mercer. It was the quarterfinal game, and for some reason because all season long I had taken care of the football pretty well. That's something that I take a lot of pride in, and I just felt like I forced the ball and it got picked twice. So for me, that was probably the worst performance that I had this year.
So obviously the quarterback position is under a microscope, and as fans, we're focused on you guys. What do you think is the biggest misconception or the thing that as fans we don't understand about playing quarterback that might be helpful for us as we're watching you guys do your job?
Just how fast the game is and how fast you have to, react to certain stuff and different looks. Like for me, pre-snap, post-snap, there's 10 things that I'm looking for each and every snap. You got to know the down and distance. You have to know where you're at on the field. You have to know where your read keys are at pre-snap, post-snap, trying to ID the coverage, who's going to pressure, setting the protection. So there's a lot that goes into this
Not to mention the play clock.
And the play clock, yeah, and trying to do that all, within a span of 15, 20 seconds usually. So I just think, and then the windows are going to be tighter too in the NFL. And, so I just think it's probably the toughest position in any sport. And that's why I play it. I enjoy, the competitiveness and everything that comes along with the position.
Who are some of your teammates that you think are poised to make that jump to the NFL, whether it's this year, whether it's next year? Who are some of those standout teammates for you?
For me, one guy that comes to mind is Nick Nash. I think he's done a really good job this week, and just, his ability to go up and get any ball, and he's really good at the line of scrimmage. And then I would say the Eastern Washington receiver as well. He's done really good in the slot. Auburn has had 2 or 3 guys on our team that are awesome as well. So I just think the guys that are here, I think all have great chances of making it at the next level. And yeah.
How about coming up from your team at North Dakota?
I would say Gray Zabel, offensive tackle. I know he's going to do great this week at the Senior Bowl. He's been such a great mentor and leader for me, and he's, helped me push the envelope and continue to grow as a person and as a player.
Well, we want to thank you, Cam, for coming on the show, breaking things down for us, and appreciate your time, man.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.
A big thanks to Cam Miller chatting us up at the Shrine Bowl. Fun interview. One thing I learned, Adam, Cam Miller, not invited to the NFL Combine.
That's a whiff.
I know.
Yeah, he was the best of the quarterbacks at Shrine Bowl, in my opinion.
Because he could actually score points, for one, when they got out on the field. And two, he had the best touch, I think, of any of the guys. Like,
yes,
sure, McCord could zip it. The other dude from Minnesota could zip it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not just about throwing real hard as a quarterback all the time.
No, and when I do my quarterback evals, man, like arm strength, all I want to see is enough. Just enough arm strength. I don't have to see him throwing lasers all over the yard to get excited about a dude.
Yeah.
And just a delightful guy. I really appreciate Cam spending the time. He was a good sport, especially with any of my ridiculousness. And big shout out to him. Wish him nothing but success going forward. Awesome dude.
Nothing but success. Hopefully he doesn't get stepped on as much at the NFL level as he did in North Dakota. Hopefully maybe it's in a warmer location because just not being outside all the time.
100%.
All right, Adam, around the NFC West. Let's see, Scott Huff hired by the Rams as the tight ends coach. Did you see that?
That's interesting. I'm surprised he didn't end up back at Alabama with all of his boys there.
You would have thought that he would have followed his buddies back to Alabama. Not the case. He does have a history of being tight ends coach. It also seems like a lot of offensive line guys and it's kind of tight ends and offensive line. They kind of go together.
They do. They absolutely do. They play in line with the line. They block. And then it's just like having a guy who can catch the ball a little bit too. So good for Scott Huff. Maybe he got to the league, got a taste of it, and was like, God, college football really is trash. I'd like to stay in the NFL. And he made a good decision for himself.
Except the part of going to the Rams. He could have picked a better location than that.
Hey, man, I'll tell you straight up. If I was a coaching free agent and I was looking for a place to go to where my name would just suddenly appear in higher up positions the next offseason because I looked at Sean McVay from across the meeting room, Yeah, that's probably where I'd go.
Yeah,
Makes a lot of sense.
Scott Huff probably going to be a head coach candidate now next year. Because he he shared a meeting room with Sean McVay a couple times.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Okay. So good for Scott Huff.
Yeah, he's smart. Report out there that Russell Wilson, there's a rift between Russ and the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh, which was confusing to me because Russ was going around talking about how much he wanted to return to Pittsburgh this season. So I don't know what to believe here.
Yeah, this one feels like fake news. When you hear Mike Tomlin speak glowingly about Russ, speak glowingly about Arthur Smith, Russ talking about, the great coaches that he's been around, leaving out Sean Payton and Nathaniel Hackett, and talking about Pete and Tomlin. And he wouldn't say that if he hated the system and the opportunity that he was given by the Steelers. And look, I know that historically speaking, the idea of Russ having an issue with an offensive coordinator or a coach has been a thing. Like, that's been a thing. And it'd be easy to invent that story for where he is now. I think at this point of his career, he knows exactly where he's at. It's Steelers or maybe Raiders if he's lucky. And that's it. That's the options available to him. I don't think he's going to be lighting Arthur Smith on fire at that point.
I guess it wouldn't surprise me if it were a thing necessarily that he was trying to get a new offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh, but it also seems unlikely. So, yeah, it was a real weird story for me.
Yeah. No, that seems a little crazy.
Another weird story, a criminal story, in fact. Mike Holmgren snubbed for the Hall of Fame, Adam.
That's right. People are going to jail. I think JD Vance is leading an investigation into this catfish and going to throw some people in Gitmo because apparently that's what we're doing again.
I think locking somebody up in Gitmo would be appropriate for this because
I think so.
It's atrocious.
It's atrocious. And if Mike Holmgren is not a Hall of Fame football coach, then kick them all out. Take all the busts out. And I mean, except for maybe Vince Lombardi at that point, and then you call it good? How is Mike Holmgren not a slam dunk Hall of Fame football coach? He went to 3 Super Bowls, won 1, took 2 different franchises, and his winning percentage is off the hook. Like, for as long as he coached, this is outrageous.
Yeah, won as an OC for the Niners, won as a head coach for the Packers, took the Seahawks.
Lost one with the Packers, too, to the Broncos.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
getting to the Super Bowl is a huge effing deal.
It's crazy because you look at the first 20 years of Super Bowl winning head coaches in the NFL, and every one of those dudes, except for one, was in the Hall of Fame. It was
really?
It was like the Baltimore Colts coach who I think he was the dude who took over for Shula or something like that.
Held Johnny U's clipboard. Who was the real coach.
He only had 4 years, even in the NFL. So it's not like he had any kind of career. But every other guy, all the way up through the first 20 years of the NFL, up until you get to George Seifert. All of those guys, Hall of Famers.
Unbelievable. And the Seifert thing does still feel a tiny bit unfair, but I do understand the thought process. Like, he basically did the Barry Switzer thing, taking over for Jimmy Johnson and then winning a chip, taking over for Bill Walsh, winning a chip.
He won 2, though.
And that's what I was going to say. The difference being is Barry Switzer was a horse's ass when it came to coaching in the NFL and didn't know his knees from his elbows. Whereas Seifert was competent.
Yeah. And then Switzer, he got out of the NFL and he's like, I'm never coaching again.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm done. I just want to be Barry Switzer and smile big and say bombastic catfish.
Oh, and then, I guess the other guy who would kind of be in that snub territory would be Old Man Shanny.
Not in yet.
Not in yet.
That's ridiculous. Like, he won back-to-back chips. It got John Elway his chip. Not that I'm a fan or really excited about it, but that's a big deal. That's a big football legacy deal.
The thing that upsets me about this is that this probably means that Mike's just not getting in because he was at this point. He was one of the finalists. He was the only coach among the finalists, and all they had to do was thumbs up, thumbs down, and thumbs up his way in. I don't. It's so weird to me.
You don't have to worry about it, man. He'll be back as a finalist next year, and we're going to have about half new voters because the other guys are going to be sweating their balls off down in Cuba.
Locked up in Gitmo.
That's right.
And then that'll send the message, vote correctly next time.
That's right. Exactly. Don't be a jerk.
Finally.
Big show, big Hall of Fame. It all goes together. Let's go.
Well, we've got a Hall of Fame group of supporters at the $12 level and above. We're going to be thanking them at the end of the show. We always start things off, though, thanking our executive producers, DCH, Ryan Peterson, and JC Schilling in the 313th. If you want to go to getintheflock.com, $3 and above gets you into our Discord where we've been chatting throughout the off season. And you can join there as a free member, too. Adam, we are 3 away from 400 members of the flock at getintheflock.com. And a big part of that is because we've had some new free members join as well here recently.
No, that's incredible. And we appreciate the support, guys. Even if it's at the free level, it does make a difference and kind of does fill up our sales. And look, so you said 3 from 4. So we're 103 off from the 500 goal.
Yep.
I not that there's a deadline on that, but like sooner than later, people chop. Let's go.
Well, let's get to 400 first, and then we'll start the push toward 500. But we're like 3 away. So, but we've got one paid member, and that is Jack, who came in at 12.12. So welcome to the flock to Jack.
Appreciate it, Jack, man. At 12.12 too, man. Coming in hot.
And we've got 4 free members to call out. We've got Jake, who came in, Brian, Derek, and Dan. So just wanted to thank those of you who came in at the free level here this past week.
Heck yeah, man. So we joke about the people that are out there that are freeloaders, right? Because this is a value for value kind of show that we provide for you guys. If you get some value out of it, if it's 50 cents a month, then kick us 50 cents a month. I mean, I would imagine the value's probably $5,000 a month, and I would just start sending that like every month if I were you. But if you can't do that, and you've been a freeloader for a while, and you feel like the grace period is running out on you, and only you really know. But we could probably get Evie, our Pick'em Overlord, to flush out the people that have bad hawker here and have been freeloading too long. But
there we go.
I think it extends your freeloader grace period if you come in and you just become a free member. I think that works.
Yeah, we said that you don't know how many extra months you're going to get, but you do get extra months. Right.
It's a surprise.
So it's a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
One other benefit, I feel like I don't mention this enough because it is value for value. One thing of value that you get by joining at getintheflock.com and supporting the show there, you get ad-free episodes. So if you're listening to this feed somewhere, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's through a podcast feed and an ad pops in, you don't have to deal with that if you're helping to support the show. Getintheflock.com.
That's exactly right. And look, we'll be just honest about it. We'd much rather not have ads in any of our shows and just be completely listener supported. We would much rather go that way. And again, every time you guys hop in and become a little flocker and help us out, man, it really does mean the world. And thank you a ton.
Well, you brought up Evie, our Pick'em League overlord, Adam. We do have a conclusion to the Pick'em League. I guess I'll say it's unofficial until we do hear from the overlord, Evie. But what do you say we get into some unofficial results from this year's 2024 Seahawkers Podcast Pick'em League, Adam?
There you go.
Starting off and congratulating Morley Gorlin, who picked Philadelphia for the winner and the final score of 62. He was the only flocker that actually picked the game correctly and the score correctly. The DCH also picked 62 points, but he had the Chiefs.
Yeah, Morley, better than me. I thought for sure that the Chiefs were going to be able to eke this one out. I thought that they were going to be a tough out for the Eagles. And I was wrong, just like the DCH, unfortunately.
You two were so So wrong. But also wanted to congratulate Haley with the team for Hawks' sake. About 40 points behind the leader in the final total, but still got in that Super Bowl pick. So
nice.
Even though a lot of times it comes down to the end of the season and it's just the people who are like slotting for the top 5. But I just wanted to recognize that, yes, there are people out there too who still plugging away. Final game of the season. I appreciate that.
Heck yeah, man. Don't give up. Don't ever give up.
All right, looking at the top 5, we had 4 people finish tied for the top 5, Adam. And we had Tram Rammers, Toon Hawk, Hotlanta Hawk, and I Like to Touch My Bobo. And the winner, taking sole possession of 5th place, is I Like to Touch My Bobo, who had the Eagles and who had 59 points for the tiebreaker. So just 3 off from the final score.
Man, and still 5th after being that money right at the end.
Money right at the end. Lock it away in the 4th position. Love to Wags My Dixon in 3rd. And 2 people, Adam, tied for 1st place. Fernando Tejada and Wirehawks.
Yeah. All right.
And the person with the closest to the correct score of the game was Fernando Tejada. Both of them actually picked the Chiefs for the winner. And so I had to go down to score tiebreaker. And it was Fernando who had 52 points. Wirehawks who had 48 points. It was a 62-point game. And so Fernando Tejada in the final week, that was just enough to get the winning prize. So congrats to Fernando.
That's awesome, Fernando. I'm not sure I like the tiebreaker situation, though, right? It was a little like the strength of schedule thing for the Seahawks this year, not getting in. So I came up with something else. Okay. So this is what we're doing.
Well, this
third
is
week of June.
Wait, before you throw it out, this is for consideration by our overlord and Pick'em League ruler, Evie.
Oh, she's going to like this. I knew I didn't even have to run her by her. I knew she'd be on board on this.
Okay.
Third week of June, both these folks, Fernando and Wirehawk, they're coming out to the cabin, and I've got 2 rafts ready to go, and we're going to have a river race down the river all the way to where it pours into the Clark Fork from my place. There's some Darley Rapids in between, and there's no rules. There's no rules. So if you want to bring a BB gun and start shooting the other raft up, you could do that. Like you could chop down a tree behind you if you're in the lead, like across the river, throw a stringer across there and like screw somebody up. I just thought like if we did it more Survivor style, like it'd be more exciting.
Can I tell you what I was thinking?
Yeah.
I was just thinking that I would allow them to pick their favorite player from the Seahawks and get them a signed jersey for both of them.
Okay. Sounds a lot drier, but that's okay.
So essentially they get the same prize.
Yeah.
That was my thought. But
all right.
Okay.
That's better.
So we do that.
That's fine.
But then we have to have the race to decide who is the true champion.
That's right. Absolutely. And I don't care if either of them
can't
have
just share first place.
No. I mean, unless they have another competition that they'd rather enter into. I just thought that would be a fun one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. River Rapids.
That's right. It's like bumper boats, but for real and dangerous.
And then we make it we invite out other members of the flock. Mm-hmm. And then we get to stand on the banks of the river and like throw things at them as 100%. Obstacles. So like we can just throw logs into the river ahead of them and have to make them go around.
Yeah. 100%. I like it. Yeah. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. And the fun part is that it's technically a creek. It's like a small river. Mm-hmm. Either way, it's pretty tight. So any of those obstacles you throw out there, you're kind of just boned. You're carrying the raft for a while. So that's going to be a good time.
I just want it to be a mix of American Ninja Warrior and whatever River Rapids show is on TV.
Okay, I could also turn it into like a full-on Gulch mini triathlon too. That's like American Ninja style.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a place I've been wanting to build a zip line for a long time. We could put that in.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I like the sound of this too.
We could do some sort of fire starting competition in there. Maybe some gun shooting. I don't know. The fun.
Should we make them survive out in the wilderness around your cabin for 5 straight days and I don't know how we pick a winner, but we just make him do it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. It's like a loan style. But either way, they'd probably be fine. Ollie would just go and hang with him and nothing would happen. Okay. So be fine. Ollie, keep him safe.
Well, congratulations to the top 5 in the Pick'em League this year. I'll work on getting prizes out. That's what I'll do this offseason.
Yeah. No, thanks for everybody who participated. A lot of fun. Look forward to hearing from Evie in the final coronation here at some point this offseason. It was cool. It's really cool. I almost made it to the end. This is as close as I've gotten in a lot of years. And I vow to maybe make it next year.
We'll get there. We'll try. We'll do our best to try.
That's right.
What do you say we get to do better and better at life?
All right, man. Well, my do better this week, Brandon, when I saw this, it just screamed that like I had to put it on the show for you. Because for those of you who don't know, I have never seen a man who can spot Reese's peanut butter cups. Like, for example, we're at my family's lake house. He opened up the fridge. It's full of stuff.
Yeah. You've told the story on the show before.
Have I? Okay. Yeah. Picked out a Reese's peanut butter cup in a half a second in one clear drawer that was like kind of sideways and just the butt end was sticking out. He found it. He's the lover of the Reese's, right? So I see this article from Sports Illustrated, and the title's great too. I enjoy this because this is the fun clickbait that I'm like into. Harrowing footage of Dan Orlovsky eating a peanut butter cup raises serious questions. And it does. It raises all the questions, Brandon, because I always thought that Dan Orlovsky might be an alien. Like, I'm leaning lizard people, but you could give me a tall white. Like, I'd be in there. But he looks a little like an alien. But now I know for freaking sure, Brandon. I sent you the video, and we both watched Dan Orlovsky take his Reese's peanut butter cup and basically nibble around it and spit out the milk chocolate parts, because apparently he doesn't like milk chocolate because, obviously, that's a dead ringer for being an alien. There's nobody on the planet who's a real human being that doesn't like milk chocolate. So he just eats the peanut butter part out and then gently spits the milk chocolate into the freaking Reese's wrapper. Like that's what it was made from. You know, when they said there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, wrong. We found it. Dan Orlovsky, do better. It's dirty alien.
He might be part canine because if he, as a dog, you're not supposed to give your dog chocolate. Maybe Dan Orlovsky knows that it could kill him.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody from the Alpha Centauri system is like that. Like they can't eat chocolate. It'll kill them.
I have never seen anybody, because what is the point? Okay, why don't you just eat peanut butter? Like peanut butter on its own is good. Like you can just stick a spoon in a jar of peanut butter and eat the peanut butter. Like it's not that Reese's peanut butter in the Reese's peanut butter cups is so good that like it's far superior to just getting Jif peanut butter out of the container. Like, so why do you torture yourself by eating around the chocolate?
Yeah, I do contend like it's not better per se, the Reese's peanut butter, but it is different. It's its own thing. It's almost, I don't know. It's sweeter. Like there's more sugar added to it. It's got a little different texture.
Well, it's next to the chocolate, so it does absorb maybe some of that flavor profile from the chocolate.
Yeah. Maybe it's sweetness through osmosis. Maybe that's what's happening there. But like this is worse than the Seinfeld episode where they're eating a Snickers bar with a knife and fork. Like that was bizarre. That was weird. Probably aliens. But this is, I mean, Dan Orlovsky can't even hide among us anymore. Like he just revealed himself. It was weird.
It's way too much work to try and just get I'd almost argue that using a knife and fork is probably an easier way to go, because then you could pry the chocolate around. You could just scrape with the knife and then eat the peanut butter that way. And then you don't have to try and nibble around it and then spit out little chocolate pieces.
Yeah. Like you almost need like a grapefruit spoon, right? You can like pick the chocolate off the top and then like carve the peanut butter out of the middle.
Yeah.
Like instead of doing the way
this
alien eating
I'm so
process.
concerned about what I saw. It's like, I feel like we need to help Dan, like, because this is ridiculous. So there has to be a better way for him.
There has to be a better way. Like this is unacceptable, soldier. You got to do better.
My do better this week is for Vinny Iyer. of the sporting news. And apparently Vinny's editor hates him because Vinny had to do an article on the top 5 landing spots for Aaron Rodgers this offseason. But Vinny knows that his editor hates him and was like, screw you. If I'm going to do this, I'm not writing any more than 2 sentences per landing spot for Aaron Rodgers. But just guess some of the teams in the top 5. I think number 1 you can probably guess because it makes some sense.
The fun part is that there's no wrong guesses because this is complete fan fiction. Because Aaron Rodgers isn't going to another team to be their starting quarterback next year. Browns would probably be on the list.
Not in the top 5.
What?
Raiders? Raiders number 1.
Okay.
Steelers number 2.
Okay.
New York Giants number 4. And Indianapolis Colts number 5, despite even putting up a billboard saying that they are not signing Aaron Rodgers.
I think I would have put the Vikings above the Colts because if they let Sam Darnold go, bring in Aaron on a cheap contract, just buy JJ like 6 to 8 games to, practice throughout the year, watch it done a little bit more, get the knee right, and then unleash him, and then, a washed up Aaron. Plus, that would complete the Brett Favre circle.
Then all he has to do is steal from poor people, and he totally completes the circle of Brett Favre. So the idea that the Seahawks are number 3 on this list and not the Minnesota Vikings, not even doing this right. Vinny, do better.
Oh my God, you about made me spit out my tea on that one. You're going to get us sued like McAfee, man.
Allegedly stealing from poor people.
That's right. There it is. There it is. Good job. That was funny, man. That's one of the better ones you've had in a minute. All right, man. On to better at life. All right. My better at life is for Saquon Barkley. And look, I'm giving him this because of something he did during the parade, but also because I was wrong. I was dead wrong. I was all the wrongs when he ended up with the Eagles. I said some stuff that, was wrong. It's just as wrong as it gets. He was awesome this year. Obviously a difference maker. And then on top of all of that, in his moment of triumph at the Super Bowl parade, he's walking down and talking to fans and walking down the street, everybody on the sidewalk, recognizes one of the ball boys for the Eagles and sees him there. He's obviously excited to see the kid or the dude. I don't know if he was a full-grown man or a boy. I couldn't really tell from the footage, but anyways, pulls the dude out of the crowd, brings him into the parade to walk with the Eagles as part of the team. I thought that was cool. And hats off to Saquon, who probably should have been MVP this year. Amazing player, amazing season, amazing action at the end of the year. Congratulations to him. Saquon Barkley, better at life than Skip Bayless.
Greatest season by a running back in NFL history in terms of what he was able to, like the numbers that he ended up putting up. Like no running back has ever rushed for that many yards.
Yeah.
Incredible year by Saquon.
Incredible year by Saquon. I think Walter Payton has some things to say about greatest year ever. There's some other years by running backs I might put at least on par with Saquon. Come on. I mean, he didn't play the last regular season game, right?
No.
Or did he?
No, he sat out that game.
So he didn't even get the benefit of the extra game.
But if they said that if he would have played and then broke Eric Dickerson's record, that he still would have done it in fewer rushing attempts.
Yeah. And, so, I mean, I guess that works.
So who cares that it was fewer game or the more he had one extra game, he still would have done it in fewer attempts.
Yeah. Well, bad news for Saquon is that there's going to be a running back that would have had 2 extra games to try to get the record here in the next couple of years because the greedy ass owners are going to squeeze another regular season out of these players somehow. Like it's going to
find a way.
It's gross.
My better at life this week is for a place on Reddit called Peter Explains the Joke. And there's this, I came across this cartoon. Well, I came across Reddit and I saw this joke and I also didn't get it. And it's an old timey cartoon. And
yes, you sent it to me.
Yeah. The lady, he's holding the door for the lady. She's getting in the car and the caption on the cartoon is, and it shows her wearing big boots. And she says, they're hiking boots. I've heard a lot about you too.
Yeah.
And I am much like...
Oh my God, this guy's Bill Burr. He's Dave Chappelle. He's Josh Johnson. He's George Carlin. This is an amazing cartoon.
Can you explain this joke before I get into why this place on Reddit exists? Can you explain why it's funny that she's wearing hiking boots? Because she knows a lot about him.
Okay. Well, I have a hard time explaining it because maybe the joke is that they're not hiking boots because they're fucking Santa boots. They're Santa boots. Those are not hiking boots in any way, shape, or form. If you hiked in those on the regular, you would hate everything about your life. They're slip-ons. They're, over the calf with a fluffy ring around the top. Those are not hiking boots. Those are more like galoshes.
They do look more like galoshes. So, but that is not, I guess, part of the joke.
The reason I can't explain this as a joke.
Yeah.
This isn't a joke. That's not a joke.
So one of the things that I've discovered because of this place on Reddit is that apparently back in the day, what guys would do is that they would run out of gas on purpose with the vehicle. So they would get stuck in a secluded location and it would be like makeout time.
Right.
As you run out of gas. And this is something new that I learned because I never knew that this was even a thing.
That had been what, like 10 dudes who did this? Like, I can't imagine that, like, running out of gas in the middle of nowhere where you're now in a borderline survival situation. You know what my first thought process isn't? It isn't to start making out. Like, that's not where my head's at that point. It's more like, oh, no, we're out of dinosaur juice. Either need more dinosaur juice or I need to not be wearing these stupid Santa boots so I could have hiked myself home.
Well, and the other part about this, too, it's actually the beginning of the music video Thriller where they run out of gas at the beginning of the music video. And he says, honestly, we ran out of gas. Like, so he's not even he's trying to say that was not the scenario that he intended to put them in.
So did Michael Jackson? I've never really seen the video all the way through, like, especially from the beginning.
Yeah, that's right at the beginning.
So at the beginning, was it like Michael Jackson with like two small children in the car when they like broke down? Like,
no. An actual female.
I just didn't know if it was historically accurate or not. Was really what
I think it's a little bit of
much like Deshaun Watson. Every time Michael Jackson's name comes up, I want to make sure everybody remembers this great artist or this great player, what they were. Like,
and you
just
have to make everybody feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Because I can't stand when people lionize Michael Jackson. It makes me throw up in my mouth. But
I was just trying to explain that this has like a historical.
I'm not saying you were. Yeah.
Anyway, I am also confused about the dynamics of the situation because is this, a nefarious thing or were girls looking forward to running out of gas moments?
I don't know. Maybe that was the equivalent of Netflix and chill back in the day. Like
let's
run out of gas and hotbox the car. I don't know. Like then also looking at the cartoon, Brandon, as far as like old timey cartoon chicks, like she's a solid 7, maybe an 8. Like she's good looking. Dude though, like that's a 3, man. That's a 3. He's got 4 pieces of hair. He's got lots of bad freckles because sometimes freckles can be good. And he's also got a witch's nose. And
he's all hunched over. He's like a little hunchbacky. And he has Sideshow Bob shoes.
He does have Sideshow Bob shoes.
So
Brittany's shaking her head being like, what the hell are you talking about?
Well, in an age of memes and online jokes, it's tough to keep up with everything. And so for Reddit and Peter Explains the Joke, better at life than Skip Bayless.
Hey, man, that's yeoman's work for something that doesn't make sense. And secondly, I didn't know this existed, and I probably need it in my life, the Peter Explains the Joke, because there's so much pop culture that just goes straight over my head in the memes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, we're around Dallas area or Texas. Like we had a podcast that was on. And I started talking about the actress and sub actor that were having a fallout. Like, which ones were that again?
It was.
I don't.
Oh,
there are people I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Like Blake Griffin or something.
Blake Lively.
Oh, Blake Lively, right? No, Blake Griffin, the basketball player. Yeah, it's like, I mean, they're making all these references to like all these different people, different movies, and all this stuff that's going on. I'm like, nope,
idea.
Big fat nope. Don't know any of this stuff. So I need this guy. I need him to explain this stuff.
Well, maybe that's why you got Blake Griffin and Peter Griffin, because it's Peter Griffin explaining the joke. That's where that comes from. So,
oh no, I'm at a stage in life where I need Peter Griffin to explain things to me.
I'm sorry.
Catfish!
Well, we want to thank our $12 supporters and above as we close out the show. Let's get to it, Adam. A big thanks from them.
Keith Kedover, a.k.a. Flocktimus Prime, University of Cybertron, Little Flockers, roll out.
DCH from Sparks, Nevada, the University of Montana Grizzlies.
Gary Blum from Chappaqua, New York, and the University of Pennsylvania, your 2016 Pick'em League champion.
Ron Pepper, UNLV Runnin' Rebels, San Francisco, California.
Hello, this is Hock Van Dyke from London, the 2024 champion of the Ring of Honor Fantasy Football League.
Lisa in Seattle.
Samuel Gelber, NoHo, California.
David Van Cleve, Camas, Washington, home of the Papermakers.
Leo Jesse, Luleå, Sweden, from Luleå Eskimos and Rennes in France.
Aaron Fisher, coming in from Henderson, Nevada. Go Hawks!
Chris Boucher, a.k.a. the biggest little flocker, South Central Louisiana State University. Go Mud Dogs.
Hey, it's JC Schilling, back from Germany, living on beautiful Whidbey Island now with Quinn and Hudson.
Go Tyler! Go Gino!
Go Hawks!
Marty from Down Under, Australia. Go Hawks!
Hey Seahawkers, my name is Garen Taylor. I live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, North Idaho. Hashtag on the roads. Go Hawks.
Continuing on down the list, you heard from executive producers DCH and JC Schilling. Also, thanks again to executive producer Ryan Peterson. And a big thanks to Becca in Manhattan Beach, Christina in Manassas, Craig in Camas, Jeremiah in the Bronx, Sven in Berlin, Deutschland, Kevin in Great Glen, England, Brandon in Huntersville, North Carolina, Jonathan in Ridgefield, Brian in Omak, Jay in Linwood, Hector in Monroe, Kevin in Surrey, BC, JC in Horsford, England, James in Beauarts, Pepper in Greer, South Carolina, Brian in Berlin, Connecticut, Tracy in Kaneohe, Hawaii, Connie in Gothenburg, Sweden, Marvin in Riverdale, Utah, Jeffrey in Kansas City, John in New York, Patrick in Sacramento, Tim in Olympia, Bryson in Eltopia, Glenn in Ocoee, Florida, Jeremy in Federal Way, Josh in Candor, New York, Ken in Hutto, Texas, Mario in Seattle, Cora in Ditters, Deutschland, Anders in Viola, Denmark, Warren in Dundee, Oregon, Paul in Portland, Daniel C. in the Greater Hockham, Norma in the Greater Hockham, Chris in Austin, Rafe in Beaverton, Oregon, Amy in Squim, Richard in Killeen, Texas, Joseph in Vancouver, Eugene in Henderson, Nevada, Jeff in Bainbridge Island, Marlon in the Greater Hockham, Ryan in Salt Lake City, Jamie in Oswestry, England, Alexander in Oranienburg, Deutschland, DJ in Menifee, California, BB in the Greater Hockham, Spooty Poo in Olympia, Joshua in the Greater Hockham, Kayla in Vancouver, Tanner in Kalispell, Mark in Bexley Heath, England, Gordon in Valdez, Alaska, Jeff in Gilbert, Arizona, Jason in Panama City, Florida, Sean in Cascade, Iowa via Kalispell, Montana, RJ in Kellogg, Idaho, Jason in Portland, Oliver in Fort St. John, BC, Ian in Seattle, Daniel in Post Falls, Idaho, B-Walls 22 in New York, Jay in Fairbanks, Alaska, Russell in Harpenden, England, Sam in Alamonte Springs, Florida, Ovary Smasher 69 in Phoenix, Chris in Manchester, England, Greg in Lake City, Colorado, Corey in Robertson, Australia, Charles in Bremerton, Mike in Kelowna, BC, Nathan in Fife, Ken in Stanwood, Stu in Navarre, Florida, Ranger Luke in DuPont, The Poetrist in Boise, RJ in Bucyrus, Kansas, Nate in Solna, Sweden, Martin in Ferrum, Denmark, Jeremiah in the Greater Hawkdom, Root in the Greater Hawkdom, Kyler in Tioga, North Dakota, Dan in Seattle, and Jack in San Diego. And there it is. Our listeners who are helping to support the show at $12 and above. We want to make sure and shout them out every single month. And because, we have a great appreciation for those of you who really help keep the show going.
Heck yeah, man. You guys are fantastic. It every month when we go through it, I'm like, holy smokes, look at this. Like, look at how many people really do go out of their way to help make this happen. And it's just awesome.
It almost makes you wonder that if they can find a way to support the show, Adam could find a way to understand pop culture references more on the regular.
I think it's easier to write a check than it is to understand half the memes out there.
And I think with that,
there it is. There's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.